Bem-vindos a este webinar e gostaria, em meu nome pessoal, na qualidade de coordenador nacional do projeto PROMOVE Comércio, desejar uma reunião produtiva. PROMOVE Comércio é um projeto implementado pela UNIDO e financiado pela União Europeia e visa necessariamente garantir que as empresas nacionais tenham a capacidade necessária em termos de preparação, quer em termos técnicos, em termos de normas e regulamentos para poderem exportar para a União Europeia. E temos a honra de poder contar com a União Europeia, representada pela responsável do setor de infraestruturas, setor privado, e também do lado do governo, em colaboração, trabalhamos em colaboração com o INOC e temos a honra também de ter o senhor diretor, Alfredo Stoy, a representar o INOC, e teremos durante as 2 horas da reunião painelistas que vão partilhar conosco informações sobre PROMOVE Comércio com mais detalhes, por isso que não irei entrar em pormenores e essa parte vai ficar com os painelistas. Na verdade, esse primeiro webinar é mais para falarmos os consultores vão apresentar o primeiro levantamento feito sobre as normas e regulamentos técnicos necessários para que no setor de pesca se consiga exportar produtos de pesca e da aquacultura para a União Europeia. Nisso teremos a consultora Margarida, que vai fazer a apresentação, e depois será seguido por uma discussão em plateia, contando com a facilitação do François, que é o especialista sênior na área da qualidade de infraestrutura. Irei, em seguida, convidar o senhor diretor, Alfredo Stoy, que é diretor-geral do INOC, a preferir algumas palavras, e depois de seguida iremos contar com a representação da União Europeia. Muito obrigado, senhor diretor Stoy.
Obrigado, Zacarias. Muito bom dia a todos. Nós, como INOC, sentimos honrados em participar neste webinar e também considerando a importância do tema, porque Moçambique é um país que tem como pescado um dos produtos para a exportação, e neste caso para a exportação para o mercado europeu, que o tema vai permitir nós, como moçambicanos, entendermos melhor as normas técnicas necessárias, assim como os regulamentos que devem ser cumpridos no mercado europeu para conseguirmos exportar com sucesso. E, sem perca de tempo, iria desejar a todos os participantes boas contribuições para o tema e que saiamos no final, portanto, deste webinar com mais conhecimento sobre esta área de pesca e aquacultura. Muito obrigado, bom trabalho.
Muito obrigado, diretor Stoy, pelas palavras. Eu gostaria, em seguida, de convidar...
If I just may quickly interrupt, sorry. Please, all panelists ensure to be on the right channel in order for the interpreters can rightly translate you. So please ensure that you are in the English channel if you're speaking in English, and in the Portuguese channel if you're speaking Portuguese. Many thanks for this. Please, Zacharias, you can proceed.
Obrigado, Karen. Desculpa, talvez não tenha cometido uma pequena falha. Gostava de apresentar a minha colega Karen, que vai nos ajudar na moderação e em alguns aspectos técnicos ligados ao próprio webinar. Muito obrigado, Karen, por essas palavras. E gostava de passar para a representação da União Europeia, que é o doador deste projeto, para tecer algumas considerações sobre o projeto PROMOVE, no geral, que é um programa maior que o PROMOVE Comércio e o PROMOVE Comércio em particular, que é este que está sendo implementado pela UNIDO. Muito obrigado. Werner, please.
Okay, good morning and welcome to everyone to this webinar. So as was already explained, PROMOVE Comércio is an EU-funded project and to which UNIDO contributes to its implementation. We're very proud that this project is seeing the day with some concrete activities. We were talking since a few years about this project, but now it's finally all happening. It's a very important project because, as the title says, it promotes trade and trade between the European and Mozambique in particular. Because being able to export to the European Union is a great opportunity. As you know, the European Union has a market of over 500 million people. There are 27 different countries, and it's a continent with a very high purchasing power. So this makes it an attractive market for Mozambique. Also, Mozambican exporters have the chance that they can claim to export to the European Union under free trade agreements that were signed. So there's not only the everything but arms agreement under the GSP system, but there's also one of the very few economic partnership agreements that was signed with SADC countries, where Mozambique also takes part in, that is actually up and running for the African continent. So please, there's a duty-free, quota-free access to the European Union, and together with UNIDO, we want to help you to grasp the opportunities that exist. Because of course, we are also aware as Europeans that the standards, the quality standards for the products that we allow to be imported in the European Union are quite high. They're very restrictive. So that's also why we asked UNIDO for help, so that Mozambican exporters can be better prepared. Because we often face the question from small and medium-sized companies, how do I export to the European Union? So this webinar, it's the first maybe, but definitely not the last, in which we will start answering this question. So I mentioned UNIDO, our implementing partner, but we're also, of course, working closely together with ENOC. So thank you, Director General, for being present today. And as well, we work hand in hand with the Ministry of Industry and Trade. So the project will be running for the coming 3 years. So please stay tuned. You can stay tuned through our Facebook page, through the PROMOVE Comércio webpage, through UNIDO's webpage. And very important, because there's important information on there for the time being. For instance, it's very important to go there and to see that we have a call for proposals that is open to SMEs, Mozambican SMEs, in specific value chains, specific regions, but it's broader than that. So please go and have a look, because the deadline is the 3rd of November, and it's actually to offer assistance to those SMEs that have the potential, but that just need this little push, this little assistance to be able to export to the European Union. So there's a very concrete opportunity, but deadline is pending. It's the 3rd of November, if I'm not mistaken. So please do everything to keep to follow this project on social media and not to miss out any of the opportunities. So I can only wish that soon in Europe we see supermarkets full of products made in Mozambique, and I wish you a very fruitful seminar. Thank you.
Muito obrigado, Verne, pela rica explicação sobre o projeto e as potencialidades que o projeto oferece para as pequenas e médias empresas em Moçambique. Eu gostaria agora de passar para as áreas técnicas. Portanto, nós temos dentro do PROMOVE Comércio 2 áreas que se destacam muito, que é a área da infraestrutura de qualidade, que é dirigida por nosso colega, que é o João Paulo, que é ao mesmo tempo coordenador ao nível de UNIDO sede em Viena desse projeto. Ele é coordenador líder e ele vai falar da infraestrutura de qualidade. Temos uma outra componente, que é a componente que tem a ver com as pequenas e médias empresas, que os colegas também serão brevemente apresentados e vão fazer a parte dele, mas por enquanto eu convido o João Paulo para fazer a apresentação do programa, aliás, do projeto, com alguma profundidade, sobretudo na área de infraestruturas de qualidade. Muito obrigado, João Paulo.
Obrigado, Zacarias. Bom dia. I will be speaking in English. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for having the time to join this first webinar of this project. I will be presenting an overview of what the project aims to achieve and the way we want to achieve. I will be sharing my screen. I hope that you can see my screen. Just give me 1 minute. I would like to, while I have this technical setup, I would like to thank our key partners for supporting this project, in particular the European Union. We really thank the EU at UNIDO for the trust and confidence of selecting us as partners to implement this project in Mozambique. Equally, we thank the government of Mozambique, the Ministry of Industry and Commerce, for as well having the trust in UNIDO to implement this, this project. We have been working for more than 13 years in Mozambique in areas of quality infrastructure with support of the EU. This is not a new project. We have been with these partnerships for over a decade already. And I would like to reinstate my thankful to the EU for their support for the financing and for the government, and in particular as well for Enoch as been a key partner in the developing of the previous project, and also for this this project. Let me see if I can share again. Just give me one. Okay, now. Just let me try that once again. Can you see the full screen?
We see that with the also with the next one coming. If you need, I can also then have that run for you, Juan Pablo.
Now you see it.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. So apologies for that technical. As it was mentioned, we are implementing this project funded by the European Union in order to help the SMEs of selected value chains access global markets, and in particular markets of the European Union. We believe that integration to global markets and value chains is essential, not only because it promotes an export-led growth economy, but also it touches on the key sustainable development goals that the UN and many countries have set for 2030. We aim with this integration to generate jobs and income, increase the shared prosperity, and alleviating poverty. The project aims to improve trade, competitiveness, and business environment in Mozambique for greater market access for selected value chains. And we're talking about two key sectors, fisheries and agriculture, and agribusiness. Let me now explain how we see this export business environment and what would be the key results that we expect from this project. As you know, on every value chain, there is a sequence of production, catching, processing, packaging, and then it ends up in the supermarkets in Europe or any other market destination. This is what we know as the value chain. But in order to get to that supermarket, we need to be conscious about the different rules, regulations that the market requests for any product to enter to that market. And we're talking about regulations, we're talking about standards, we're talking about food safety standards, food safety regulations, we're also talking about voluntary standards. It's not only because a product is safe that it will enter a market and then consumers will buy it. It is also other voluntary standards as the way the product is produced, how the processes, how the people are employed when producing these products. There are a whole set of different standards that markets require in order to have and buy the different products. So it is very important that we know what are these standards and regulations, because these standards don't only affect the end product, as I mentioned, it affects different processes along the value chain. So there are different standards that need to be complied in the different steps of the value chain. The standards set up the characteristics of the product or the process of the good. But these standards as well set up and outline what are the testing necessary, what are the inspections necessary in the different steps of the value chain. There's certain inspections need to be conducted to comply with these standards at different stages of the value chain. Similarly, there's some certifications in different steps of the value chain that need to comply also with these different standards. And equally important, there's some testing of products and in between products that need to comply with the, for example, maximum levels of residues permissible to enter the EU market. Similarly, there's a need for measurements to see whether the products are measured accurately. A very simple example is we need to make sure that a kilo in Mozambique is the same as a kilo in Europe. And with this is what we call the metrology. We need to make sure that the measurements that are used along the value chain in Mozambique are accurate and are similar, are equal as to the measurements used in Europe. It might be very simple that a kilo needs to be a kilo here and in France or in Germany, but it's a whole infrastructure behind to ensure that a kilo is a kilo here in Mozambique and in Europe. So we have these different services that need to support the value chains in terms of certification, accreditation, inspection, measurements. Nevertheless, with these services, there is also a need for the value chain actors, the SMEs, to know how to implement these standards. It's not only to know what are the standards and what are the regulations, but it is also very important to help the SMEs comply with these standards. First, make them aware what are the needs that are required. Second, what are the processes they need to put in place in order to comply with these standards, with this testing, with these inspections, and with these measurements. So a key element is that there is a need to support the SMEs in order to comply with these standards. There's a need to, as I mentioned, support SMEs. And there's a need also to support business development services. We don't want, as UNIDO, that after the project ends, all the capacity is gone with the project. We want to have some sustainable interventions where we can handhold different business development services to continue that support to SMEs beyond the project duration. Another key element on this environment is the role of government. Government puts in place different policies that need to govern and promote the use of quality, the proper use and the responsibilities of different actors in the country in order to manage and, as I mentioned, promote the certification, the inspection, the measurements, and the standards and standardization. So it is very important, the role of the government into setting up a national quality policy which governs the the actors and the users of all this infrastructure. A key element in trade as well is the different knowledge that the government needs to have in order to enforce the different trade agreements and the different safeguards. And it was mentioned by the EU representative on the economic partnership agreement with SADC. It is also part of the business environment, of the export business environment. With this overall picture, this is where we frame our project. We have different project results in this ecosystem, and we have different partners that we are linking in order to conduct the different activities that we have. We see one result is to support the national quality policy and the standardization. Another result is to support the certification, inspection, testing, and measurement services that support the industry. A third result is to support the business development services and the support to SMEs. And the fourth result of this program is to support the government in to implement the different safeguards. With this, in a nutshell, this is how the project is aiming at the different levels of support to have a better functioning ecosystem of quality directed to trade and compliance with market regulations. The partners, as I mentioned, the Ministry of Industry and Commerce, ENOC is a key partner. The fourth result is implemented by UNCTAD. We have a partnership. The third result on business development, we also are linking with private sector organizations in the country to partner and to deliver the best result possible. And of course, as I mentioned at the beginning, the European Union is a key partner. Without its support, we would not be able to conduct all these projects and activities. We have a set of good practices. As I mentioned, the full engagement of all stakeholders. We define role of all stakeholders. We have a private sector engagement, which is crucial. The project aims to support the private sector. So the private sector has at hand the different services, quality services of inspection, of testing. It has also institutions that can support, how to implement the standards and how to enter markets. We focus on the demand. As I mentioned, we look at what are the different requirements in the end market and how these requirements affect each step of the value chain and different institutions that need to be involved. So to have the SMEs giving the SMEs the appropriate services of testing, inspection, and support to SMEs. Also, we have the long-term thinking. As I mentioned, we want to contribute to the sustainability. So at the end of the project, there is something that stays in the country as to support continuously the different SMEs in this objective of entering and accessing new markets. The approach that we have is a quality infrastructure approach. As I mentioned, it's a demand-driven. We look at what are the regulations and what are the gaps that are needed to be improved in the country. The impact that we want to have is to have increased capacity to meet standards and quality requirements to win markets and consumer confidence. From the value chain perspective, we see that many actors are connected along the value chain, and we are identifying what are the key services that these actors need. And we map the services and the technical assistance that is required. If we find that there is a gap on the testing capacity, on the testing availability, the project will aim to improve that testing. So producers of the products don't need to send the samples overseas or to other countries and have the services of testing or inspection or certification available in the country. Of course, there is many areas to close the gap. We need to prioritize. We have a limit on time and limit on budget. So we need to be very careful in prioritizing what are the activities that will have most impact. What are the testing services, the measurement services that will have most impact at the end of the project duration, in order to prioritize those activities. The way we are working and responding to the requirements is through technical assistance, through different experts. Today we have an expert on fisheries and aquaculture that will present some of the results that we have so far in identifying the different areas, management system implementation, trainings, capacity building, provision to equipment to the different laboratories that are required to perform their activities. We'll quickly come back to this image, and just to enter into the discussion, today's discussion, we will be focusing on the second component. As I mentioned, will be explained by an expert on what are the requirements for the fish and aquaculture value chain, and what are the critical points that have been identified in order to comply with these requirements. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation.
Muito obrigado, João Paulo, pela apresentação. Eu espero que tenha ficado claro, sobretudo na área de melhoria de infraestruturas, o que se pretende no projeto. Apresentou de uma forma muito detalhada, e gostaríamos também de pedir à audiência, aos participantes, para poderem fazer a votação. A minha colega Karen vai colocar a pergunta, que tem que ser, e gostaríamos de recolher os vossos subsídios em relação a essa pergunta. Portanto, basicamente gostaríamos de saber dos participantes, portanto, em que área do setor de pescado se encontram ligados, e gostaríamos que pudessem escolher uma das opções que está aqui colocada, e nós depois, mais tarde, poderemos partilhar a informação resultante da vossa votação. Entretanto, gostaria também de poder passar para a outra componente do projeto, que tem a ver com as pequenas e médias empresas. É o terceiro resultado que se pretende atingir com este projeto, e iria pedir aos colegas da área, que neste caso seria o Sr. Wolfgang, que é um especialista internacional na melhoria ou no desenvolvimento das pequenas e médias empresas. E gostaria também, ele vai ser secundado pelo colega Alberto Medina, que também trabalha no mesmo setor como um associado do projeto. Portanto, eles vão fazer uma apresentação em nome do Sr. Alejandro Rivera, que é o coordenador dessa componente, que infelizmente não pode participar deste webinar, porque tem outras obrigações. Então, eles vão fazer a apresentação em nome dele. Wolfgang e Alberto, por favor.
Thank you, Zacharias, for the kind presentation. Thank you. Our presentation today will aim to provide you with an overview of Result 3 of the PROMOVE Comércio project, which is primarily focused on enhancing the capacity of small and medium-sized enterprises to comply with export market requirements. Globally, SMEs are considered to be the cornerstone for economic development. However, their effectiveness in creating employment and contributing to the economy also depends on their ability to remain competitive and to access foreign markets. Considering the above, the project will be providing assistance to SMEs and contribute to improving their business development services available in the country to promote the internationalization of Mozambican SMEs. The result 3 has 3 main outcomes. First, to conduct a comparative value chain analysis that will allow the project to identify the value chains and subsectors with the most significant potential for exports. Second, identify and select the export-oriented SMEs that will be supported by the project. Third, to identify business development services and business development services providers in the country, which are essential for assisting the growth and expansion of SMEs. As part of the first outcome of result 3, we have conducted a preliminary value chain analysis. The objective was to identify both the value chains and subsectors with the greatest export potential. Based on the study and informed by consultative meetings held with associations, business support institutions, and government institutions from Mozambique, the project shortlisted 5: shrimps, agricultural manufacturing, machinery manufacturing, fruit processing, essential oils, and sesame. To narrow down the selection from 5 to 3 BCs and subsectors, we have conducted a comprehensive assessment. This assessment was based on a holistic approach that, besides economic, also considers social, institutional, and environmental dimensions of each of the value chains and subsectors evaluated. The methodology employed is based on an assessment matrix that includes a set of 13 criteria and 31 sub-criteria organized under those 4 key dimensions. For conducting this exercise, the project worked in close collaboration with national institutions, including the Ministry of Sea, Inland Waters, and Fisheries. And together with them, they rated in each of the sub-criteria, leveraging from their experience, knowledge, and data available. So this slide shows an overview of the preliminary findings of the assessment. The 2 value chains and subsectors that obtained the highest rating during the evaluation were fruit processing and shrimps. At the same time, the assessment also shed light into some potential social and environmental issues. For example, in the case of fisheries and shrimps, the most mentioned concerns deal with issues related to overfishing, lack of adequate fishing equipment, and illegal fishing practices. However, the preliminary findings show very limited information about the state of processing and the involvement of SMEs. Therefore, the project has recently launched an open call of interest to invite Mozambican SMEs to take part of the project. The objective of the open call is to select the SMEs that will receive technical support to sell their products in international markets or expand their current export operations. Here, we would like to stress that although preference will be given to 5 value chains and subsectors previously mentioned, the invitation is open to all Mozambican SMEs oriented to export. The promotion campaign that began last week includes advertisements in newspapers such as Savannah and Noticias, the nationwide radio station Radio Mozambique, social media such as Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn, and direct engagement with project stakeholders. We take this opportunity to invite all SMEs present with us today to come to us for more information and to send your applications before the 3rd of November. Now, I would like to hand over to our international expert on SMEs, who will explain the project strategy for SMEs and BDS. Wolfgang, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Alberto. Good morning, everyone. Bom dia. Well, international markets are constantly changing, and exporting companies need to reach or maintain international competitiveness. I think everyone understands and feels that constant pressure in daily business when doing exports. Well, these companies need to be enabled to improve their competitive advantages, and the PROMOVE Comércio project will contribute to this effort. Please go back to the first one. Thank you. Well, the project supports small and medium-sized enterprises in selected value chains. And Ms. Verli-Smet already mentioned in the beginning the deadline for responding to the public call to the SMEs. And this, again, is a very important reminder to everyone. As you can see on this slide, pilot SMEs will be supported, and these pilot SMEs will receive upgrading kind of business support activities, which help them to become or maintain a certain degree of internationalization and export readiness. At the end, pilot SMEs will kind of also, you know, be indicative to other companies in the different sectors and value chains, but also in the specific value chain on the tier 2 or tier 2 SMEs like subcontractors and so on and so forth. So the support infrastructure will hopefully kind of have a very positive impact to export readiness across sector SMEs. Next, please. Well, when talking about SMEs export readiness and internationalization for meeting EU market requirements, there are of course a number of concerns which we have to consider and which will be analyzed in the course of the project even more. Only to mention 3 of them, well known to every one of you. The issue of lack of capital for investments, for example, in fixed assets. The issue of working capital. Well, this is critical throughout most of the agro-industry value chains. Often the small producers do not have access to loans to acquire inputs or purchase raw materials. And particularly small and also new processors have an indicated lack of technical know-how. All these kind of all these issues are going to be tackled in the project. The other issue concerns SMEs' competitiveness at international markets, which is reflected by a capability to add value to products and services. So at the end, it needs processing companies which are enabled to add value, which is also kind of reflected by salaries, for example, by profits, and so on and so forth. And finally, the third level, well, optimizing linkages between operators, quite important in the value chain, have a strong representation at government and regulatory levels, support suitable regulatory frameworks such as suitable business environment, certification, taxation, suitable and practical customs formalities, positive labor legislation, environmental laws. Next, please. Well, by doing this, we have 2 aspects. One is the aspect of an SME, of course, which is doing the job. And on the other hand, we need services, business services. So the project has a strong involvement, practically a very strong focus on supporting to develop an effective business market, BDS, business development service market, which, as you can see in the upper level of the screen, consists of a supply part, which are the BDS providers and the service providers, and on the other hand, the recipients, which are the companies or other operators in the value chain. Well, the project identifies typical demand and supply constraints, be it on the side of the BDS providers or on the side of the SMEs. And project interventions aim to overcome these constraints by supporting the creation and also the long-term sustainability of an effective business market. Now, to finalize, just a few ideas, what are typical business services in the next slide. As you can see here, these are some very typical business development services. Some are operational, helping the company to kind of improve their activities on the market, and others are strategic. This can be market access services, like, for example, market information issues, market linkages, subcontracting, outsourcing, marketing, advertising, market research, and so on and so forth. It can be, just to show you another example on, for example, on technology and innovation, technical assistance, can be technology transfer issues. It could be the linkage promotion between SMEs and technology suppliers. It could be the facilitation of technology procurement. Another example, IT services. Well, what about employing a customer relation management system, integrating IT business systems, and also providing more insights on how to make use of a more complex kind of integrated concept in communication with suppliers and international customers. As you can see, just provide you a few examples. There is a number of possible potential services involved. Well, that's all I can tell you right now. And well, any questions we are open on the chat, actually. Thank you very much. Back to the moderator.
We would like to relaunch the poll that we launched earlier, since we didn't receive many answers. So we would kindly ask you, hopefully maybe this has also helped you to warm up a bit. You have also received in the chat the link to apply for the call for SMEs. So we would relaunch the poll. And we would appreciate if you could answer and indicate in which area within the value chain are you linked. So we will give you some time to all be able to answer. You're 44, so we hope to achieve that number. And then throughout the webinar, there will be some other interesting polls coming up. So stay also tuned for them. So we have almost half of attendees who have voted. We wait for a few more if they also wish to give us their vote. In the meantime, also in the chat, you would also have seen the links for our social medias. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and you can follow our events there. Okay, so we would share now the results. And we can see, okay, we have a good number also from the private sector, policymaker. Other will be interesting maybe during the debate, see what others are representing. Okay, then I'll hand over to you, Zacharias. Thanks everyone for voting during this poll. Please.
Karen, muito obrigado e desculpa aos participantes por não termos dado tempo suficiente para responder. Na verdade, olhando para a agenda que nós temos hoje, o tempo disponível, pensei que pudéssemos, mas estamos muito bem no tempo. E muito obrigado mais uma vez por responder a estas questões, que não será a única, ainda temos mais algumas que vão nos ajudar nesse processo, porque estamos agora numa fase em que estamos a rever o projeto e muita informação vindo do vosso lado é extremamente importante para que o projeto possa responder cabalmente àquilo que são os seus objetivos e, quiçá, melhorar o ambiente de negócio em Moçambique e aumentar a capacidade de exportação das empresas moçambicanas para a União Europeia ou até substituição das importações, que é também um dos objetivos do projeto. Entretanto, vou agora passar para para a fase seguinte. O que o projeto fez agora foi tentar encontrar a capacidade ao nível de consultoria para poder fazer um levantamento preliminar daquilo que são, entretanto, os constrangimentos que as empresas nacionais, sobretudo no setor de pesca, têm estado a enfrentar para poder exportar os seus produtos para fora. Entretanto, a consultora Margarida dos Santos Correia, uma consultora experiente e conhecedora do mercado moçambicano e é especialista em padronização e certificação na área de pescado, irá fazer uma apresentação dos seus resultados preliminares e as recomendações para o setor e para as empresas que estejam interessadas em produzir e que esses resultados poderão ser tomados em consideração naquilo que seriam as fases subsequentes do projeto. Margarida dos Santos Correia, o espaço é seu, por favor.
Obrigada, Zacarias. Bom dia a todos. É com enorme prazer que estamos aqui hoje a divulgar os achados iniciais da pesquisa anexa ao projeto PROMOVE Comércio e gostaria desde já de agradecer a vossa presença e a vossa valiosa contribuição para o evento de hoje. Pronto, o meu nome é Margarida Correia, como o Zacarias já explicou, e a minha contribuição relativamente às sugestões iniciais para futuras áreas de intervenção na área da qualidade do setor, que vão ser aqui hoje debatidas, gostaria de dizer que são fruto de um trabalho que tem sido sobre a forma de colaboração entre as partes interessadas e daí que quero desde já agradecer também a contribuição imensurável por parte de todas as entidades contactadas que responderam prontamente e de forma muito construtiva. Assim sendo, vou partilhar o meu ecrã, esperemos que não haja...
Margarida, if I can just start with launching a poll, since your presentation is very much linked to that, so it gives also us a good idea to then see what the attendees think about the fishery sector in Mozambique. So I'm launching that now, and we are asking you about your opinion in terms of the potential that you see in the fishery sector in Mozambique. So just a quick warm up, and then Margarida can then tell you more during her presentation. And I see the answer is quite straightforward. I can see it from the back end. I will show it to you very soon. It's very positive from my smile. So, all right, just a few minutes. I see that we're getting more votes coming in. All right, we're ready to share the results. And so as you can see, Margarida, so right time for your presentation. Over to you. Thank you.
Obrigada, Karen, muito obrigada. Então, os nossos objetivos de hoje, vamos iniciar por fazer uma breve análise da cadeia de valor do pescado em Moçambique. Portanto, o Juan Pablo já nos fez uma boa abordagem de como é que toda esta assessoria de qualidade é feita a nível de toda a cadeia do setor, e então por isso nós vamos segregar toda a cadeia nas suas várias componentes. Seguimos de uma visualização em relação ao enquadramento legal e a organização das competências que estão ligadas ao setor do pescado, desde a governação até ao consumidor e a forma como são articuladas no âmbito da qualidade e da infraestrutura. Seguidamente, começamos a tocar no ponto de divulgação dos achados iniciais. Vamos falar acerca das análises de conformidade que foram feitas relativamente ao setor do pescado de captura e também no da aquacultura, no contexto de avaliar os requisitos sanitários para a exportação para o mercado europeu, assim como ficar com uma perspectiva relativamente às certificações voluntárias que estão associadas a ambos os setores. Finalmente, vamos consolidar todos estes achados que foram conseguidos durante estas análises e vamos transformá-los em sugestões preliminares relativamente às estratégias de intervenção futuras ao nível da qualidade e da infraestrutura que apoia o setor do pescado. Em relação à análise dos intervenientes da cadeia do pescado, permite-nos diferenciar, no geral, dois subsetores, portanto, no que diz respeito à cadeia de valor do pescado de captura e à da aquacultura. Em ambas as cadeias foi efetuada a observação de vários atores, dos vários intervenientes, em que temos aqui que evidenciar as grandes diferenças que são obtidas a nível dos inputs, portanto dos insumos, e a nível do ponto de captura, que no caso a aquacultura estamos a falar dos produtores das farmas. É feita esta análise portanto, em termos de todas as entradas que são necessárias, no caso da cadeia de valor de pescado, temos que falar na parte das embarcações, das artes de pesca, do isco, do combustível. Se falamos em termos da aquacultura, temos que falar em termos dos alevinhos e das larvas, e entramos aqui depois num terreno onde há muita importação, em termos do fornecimento de ração, de medicamentos veterinários e inclusivamente de toda a maquinaria e hardware que acompanha o setor da aquacultura. Em termos de todos os atores intervenientes na captura, também há aqui grandes diferenças a nível das duas cadeias, portanto, há que considerar os vários tipos de pesca artesanal, semi-industrial e industrial, e em termos dos produtores, temos de considerar o tipo de produção, gaiola em tanque, e a escala à qual o produtor se insere, pequena escala, média escala e industrial. Entrando na parte da transformação, já começamos a entrar num setor que há algumas similaridades entre os atores que podem intervir. Portanto, falamos em termos de processamento primário e depois do embalamento, refrigeração, congelação, consoante os produtos que são transformados ou não. Em termos de comercialização, há que considerar o mercado doméstico, o regional e o internacional, para ambas as cadeias, e em termos de consumidores, é ainda de evidenciar o consumo familiar, o consumo de comunidade em termos de consumo doméstico, portanto mercado doméstico, urbano e periurbano, e temos então depois o mundo do consumo regional e de exportação para mercados internacionais. Relativamente ao potencial da cadeia de valor, nós damos aqui há aqui uma grande questão que deve ser sempre elaborada no que diz respeito ao setor do pescado e da aquacultura. Remete-nos para uma questão acerca da potencialidade do negócio a médio e longo prazo, de forma a conseguir também consolidar as diretrizes futuras do projeto. Surge a questão em relação ao potencial, nomeadamente em relação aos estoques marinhos, em que estamos a entrar numa fase de exploração já acentuada, e temos sem dúvida que considerar que o setor da aquacultura tem um grande potencial e que se encontra neste momento subdesenvolvido e a necessitar de apoio. Todas as visões de estratégias nacionais em relação a aumentar a produção e a competitividade através de novos padrões de desenvolvimento no setor do pescado deve ser acompanhada pelo desenvolvimento das capacidades de prestação de serviços técnicos, que são agarradas a ambos os setores de captura e da aquacultura. Relativamente à estratégia da avaliação, portanto, em termos da abordagem que é feita dentro do próprio setor para se poder avaliar as necessidades da qualidade e da infraestrutura, pode parecer um pouco complexo, porque abrange todas as entidades relativas à governação, a instituições, aos serviços, passando depois por uma relação bilateral que tem que existir entre a parte empresarial, do consumidor, e através deste diagrama que conseguimos visualizar, conseguimos perceber todo o caminho que é feito desde a governação até ao consumidor. E a única forma de fazer uma avaliação das necessidades reais do setor é incluir todas as divisões que fizemos dentro da cadeia do setor de pescado e inseri-los neste diagrama. Assim sendo, e aqui já começamos um pouco a complicar a figura, temos que entender que na realidade todos os papéis que são tomados dentro do setor, sejam eles ligados ao círculo base da governação, como é o caso do MINIAP, do INIP, IDEPA, MADER, entramos noutras organizações depois de suporte, que suportam também toda a cadeia. INIP, INOC, estão aqui algumas evidenciadas, não vamos conseguir entrar em todas estas intervenções, mas é para perceber a complexidade e a interligação que existe dentro de uma cadeia de setores, neste caso do pescado e da aquacultura. Após conseguirmos visualizar toda esta dinâmica, e a intervenção, é muito importante a intervenção de todas estas instituições dentro da cadeia do pescado, temos que tentar entender como é que isto tudo se articula na realidade. Para se conseguir analisar as reais necessidades do setor em termos de qualidade e infraestrutura, tem que se conseguir fazer as interligações de todos estes intervenientes, de todos estes atores. E assim sendo, é um achado inicial que realmente o MINIAP... Conseguem me ouvir? Está tudo bem? Vou continuar, vou prosseguir. Parece-me que houve algum problema na comunicação. Em relação aos achados iniciais, portanto, o MINIAP e as suas instituições autónomas, com o INIP a ter um papel preponderante e ativo, incorporam neste momento a maioria das atividades relativamente à governação, ao controle sanitário, à certificação e a todas as necessidades complementares da cadeia de valor do pescado. Em termos do papel do INOC, dentro da complexidade de toda esta cadeia que vimos anteriormente, o papel do INOC precisa de ser fortificado, principalmente no sentido de providenciar uma gama de serviços de qualidade e infraestrutura para ambos os subsetores de captura e da aquacultura. De forma a fortificar esta possível organização e garantindo o apoio ao acesso aos mercados internacionais, nomeadamente o mercado europeu, foram feitos 2 exercícios de conformidade para a cadeia de pescado e da aquacultura. E aqui eu gostaria de, muito brevemente, explicar o porquê de 2 exercícios de conformidades. Na verdade, a grande diferença que advém em termos de requisitos obrigatórios não advém se estamos a falar só ou de um camarão ou de um polvo, mas sim tem muito a ver com a origem. E então, daí que foi optado por fazer 2 exercícios de conformidade para conseguirmos avaliar quais são realmente os regulamentos técnicos e mandatórios e todas as certificações voluntárias que estão anexas a cada subsetor. Apesar de parecer um pouco complexo, talvez, é para também conseguirmos perceber que o mercado europeu é realmente um mercado muito exigente no que diz respeito quer a regulamentos técnicos e a standardização, como também na data de hoje já estamos perante todo um mundo de garantia de qualidade em que o operador económico vê-se quase como obrigado a cumprir com certas certificações de qualidade para conseguir atingir certos mercados. E então conseguimos ver que todas as divisões que fizemos inicialmente na cadeia de valor, falámos anteriormente naquele slide, agora estão analisadas aqui no ponto de vista das suas dimensões de qualidade e infraestrutura iniciais, que são os requisitos obrigatórios, portanto, os requisitos sanitários e fitossanitários e também as técnicas de barreira ao comércio, e depois então entramos na standardização voluntária e certificação. Facilmente conseguimos ver, a nível do mercado da parte da captura, portanto, se entrarmos aqui nos inputs, temos os nossos regulamentos bases dos controlos de higiene europeus, o 178, agora o 625 de 2017, nós não vamos entrar aqui a dissecar todas estas legislações, mas dá para perceber que o que é que acontece quando estamos a falar de pescado de captura, temos que ter obrigatoriedades, como por exemplo em relação às pescas ilegais, onde temos o regulamento 1005 de 2008, que é um regulamento que não existe na cadeia de valor da aquacultura. Existirão outros, nomeadamente em relação à parte de saúde animal. Depois, entrando nas certificações voluntárias, também convém perceber que aqui as cadeias têm diferentes exigências. Tudo o que seja em relação à qualidade e segurança alimentar, tocamos aspectos em comuns. Uma ISO 9001 da parte do controle de serviço, depois ISO 22000 da parte de controle de segurança alimentar. Aqui nós podemos tocar em campos comuns, uma FSC 22000, uma BRC, mas isto é comum a ambas as cadeias, mas tem que ser também analisada a diferença que existe por serem duas origens diferentes. O mesmo exercício foi feito para a cadeia da aquacultura, onde já temos então aqui que rever toda a parte de atestamento de saúde animal, temos a parte dos medicamentos e dos resíduos de medicamentos veterinários, controle de contaminantes, portanto, o bem-estar animal. Entramos aqui num novo mundo também de certificação, em que facilmente, agora comparando os dois, nós conseguimos ver que temos muitas áreas em comum aos dois subsetores, mas que as diferenças nos pontos críticos da cadeia de valor, sejam eles por ser de captura ou de origem nas farmas, gera aí sim grandes distinções nas exigências sanitárias e fitossanitárias. E tudo isto abre portas no mundo da certificação voluntária.
Então, tem que estar ativos. O microfone, neste caso, como não vai falar, até pode... Né?
Assim sendo, e como são realmente assuntos muito extensos no que diz respeito às garantias de conformidade e de estándares voluntários, eu gostaria de partilhar algumas das sugestões preliminares para estratégias de intervenção futuras. Considerando as partes em comum a ambas as cadeias, era importante haver capacitação na área do HACCP, necessária para garantir a segurança dos alimentos e a qualidade. Relativamente à assistência a toda a operacionalização da metodologia. Nós sabemos que é uma metodologia base para entrar no mercado e precisa de ser fortificada. E acima de tudo a sua, chamamos a operacionalização, porquê? Porque é a base que nos vai dar uma possível futura certificação mais exigente. É de realçar realmente que a qualidade é um fator preponderante no mercado, nas trocas internacionais, e devemos ampliar a oferta relativamente a serviços técnicos, seja na área da rastreabilidade como na da rotulagem. É também importante aumentar as capacidades internas relativamente à auditoria e à conformidade com requisitos voluntários. Do nosso entendimento, a extensão e o alinhamento de temas, de normas, de acordo com a realidade necessária do setor, deve ser efetuada. Toda a assessoria ao operador económico no processo de implementação de certificação voluntária, que, tal como já disse anteriormente, é uma certificação voluntária, mas já é amplamente exigida no mercado internacional. E o operador económico deve ser ajudado a cumprir com esta exigência deste mercado internacional. Estamos a falar de certificações como uma 22000, como uma FSC, são certificações na área da segurança alimentar que são amplamente exigidas no mercado internacional. E é também necessário solidificar o percurso necessário para vir mais tarde a garantir esta certificação, assim como iniciar o processo de assistência à futura certificação ISO 17020 em relação aos requisitos para o funcionamento de diferentes tipos de organismos de inspeção. Isto são áreas comuns e tentei aqui mostrar dentro da complexidade deste slide, talvez, porque no final vai ficar um pouco cheio, mas gostaria de partilhar a forma como, tal como anteriormente as cadeias de valor têm vários atores que se interligam e vários momentos-chave daquele diagrama que mostrei anteriormente, agora aqui também nas sugestões temos aqui áreas que se tocam, daí que vai ficar um slide um pouco complexo no final, mas vai nos trazer a realidade no que diz respeito à interseção das várias medidas tomadas. Em relação ao mundo da captura, devemos pensar em manuais de procedimentos e de formação, nomeadamente no manuseamento após a captura. Nós estamos a falar de uma cadeia de valor que incide muito num setor primário. Este setor primário deve ser fortalecido no que diz respeito ao controlo da qualidade e da segurança dos alimentos, porque mais tarde o produto não vai conseguir ter certificação se não houver também, como eu costumo dizer, do peixe ao prato, garantia de qualidade e de segurança alimentar do peixe ao prato. Portanto, falamos de temas como o manuseamento após a captura, a questão da sustentabilidade nas pescas, no que diz respeito a guias de apoio para operadores de pequena escala. É importante também a introdução ao eco-labeling. Isto são temas neste momento de ser necessário a aproximação a este tema para conseguir entrar em mercados internacionais. Deve ser iniciado o processo de criação de estándares na área da rastreabilidade do pescado de captura e na rotulagem também. E, acima de tudo, conseguir começar a providenciar assistência inicial ao operador económico que pretenda uma certificação privada, como a SCC ou a Infomarine Trust. Mais uma vez, entramos nas certificações voluntárias que começam a ser exigidas pelo país importador ou por quem importa. E estas certificações voluntárias têm que haver aqui um upgrade de toda a base para conseguirmos mais tarde entrar nestes caminhos de certificação voluntária para ambas os subsetores da cadeia. Na aquacultura, similarmente à da captura, mas mais uma vez aqui a grande distinção, devemos ocuparmos-nos de temas como resíduos de antibióticos na aquacultura, o manual de segurança alimentar em produtos da aquacultura, aqui novamente do peixe ao prato, mas estamos a falar de perigos e de situações completamente diferentes na fase inicial do subsetor da captura. O manual do uso e registro de medicamentos veterinários na aquacultura, um ponto muito importante de tocar. A biossegurança, ambos sabemos que o setor é facilmente e fortemente afetado por doenças aquáticas. Hoje em dia também um tema internacionalmente importante é o bem-estar e a avaliação do bem-estar. Nós sabemos que para conseguir atingir novos padrões no que diz respeito à segurança alimentar, nós temos que entrar na produção intensiva, e a aquacultura acaba por ser uma produção intensiva, mas há toda a parte do bem-estar animal que é muito importante ter em conta nestes tipos de produção. Também iniciar o processo, equiparadamente ao setor da captura, relativamente à criação de estándares na área da rastreabilidade e rotulagem de produtos da aquacultura. Estamos a falar do mesmo título, mas com procedimentos completamente diferentes. E aqui também providenciar assistência inicial ao operador económico que pretenda uma certificação provada como a Global GAP ou a GAA. Portanto, aqui estamos dentro da certificação privada, voluntária, cada vez mais exigida e que precisamos de dar apoio para que consiga ser efetuada a nível nacional. Muito importante também, e que sustenta grande parte de toda esta possibilidade de certificação, é o suporte na capacitação e na acreditação de laboratórios a nível nacional, nomeadamente na testagem de metais pesados, dioxinas, PCBs, e os hidrocarbonetos policíclicos e todos os testes necessários, e aqui muito importante, para suportar o plano de controle de resíduos, de forma a que se consigam fazer estas análises a nível nacional para haver uma maior capacidade de conseguir cumprir com todas estas exigências regulamentares a nível europeu. Assim sendo, agradeço, muito obrigada pela vossa atenção. Eu creio que existem mais perguntas para serem feitas a nível deste tema e agradeço mais uma vez a vossa atenção. Obrigada.
Thank you,
Muito
Margarida.
obrigado. Muito obrigado, Margarida. Muitíssimo obrigado pela rica apresentação. Pelo menos traça alguns cenários possíveis a serem seguidos. E muito obrigado pela forma como, de uma forma mais resumida, conseguiu trazer-nos a informação necessária. Muito obrigado mais uma vez. E gostaria de convidar a Karen para, acho que ainda temos mais alguns polls que gostaríamos que pudessem responder.
So we will be launching another poll, and it's really related to the discussion. It's really related to the discussion that was presented by Margarida. I will be launching that. And we would appreciate attendees if they can provide their answer to that. Thank you.
Enquanto os participantes vão fazendo, vão dando as suas respostas em relação à sondagem, gostaria de chamar a vossa atenção para os links que estão a ser partilhados pelos nossos colegas a ver com o Facebook, LinkedIn, entre outras redes sociais que nós temos estado a usar para poder publicar aquilo que, dar a conhecer as diferentes intervenções do projeto. É extremamente importante que nos sigam ou pelo menos visitem, tanto também como temos estado a tentar fazer o mesmo com a página da União Europeia. Tem sido, não é fácil termos e-mails dirigidos às instituições, temos estado a tentar a via, por exemplo, para pequenas e médias empresas, temos estado a tentar a via das associações industriais, empresariais, como forma de atingir mais associados, mas gostaríamos que também pudessem nos ajudar, porque na verdade, como bem disse o João Pablo, esse projeto é de Moçambique para moçambicanos e só com a vossa participação é que poderemos alcançar os objetivos pretendidos nos próximos anos. E agradecíamos muito a vossa colaboração nesse sentido.
In the meantime,
Karen?
We have the results ready. So then I will then hand over to you, Zacharias, to then start with the next part of the webinar for today.
Obrigado, Karen. Bom, já tivemos a apresentação feita por Margarida e ela deverá, portanto, vai ser seguida por uma discussão que será facilitada pelo François. François é o nosso conselheiro sénior na área de melhoria de qualidade, infraestrutura de qualidade, e ele vai, portanto, moderar a discussão depois da apresentação rica feita pela Margarida. E François, obrigado.
Thank you, Zacharias. And thank you, I think, firstly for my colleagues for the good presentations. I would like also from my side to thank the European Union and ENOC with Dr. Alfredo Sepoy for the participation. And thank you everybody for so long sharing a number of questions. We have been following and we will be looking at addressing some of these questions in the session. You also have the opportunity to raise your hand. So with the support of my colleagues, thank you, Karen and Zacharias, who will be assisting to monitor the points which are raised. We will hope to cover as many of these questions. And the idea with the discussion session is to make it interactive. So I will call on colleagues present from the project team. We have representation here from all the components and from various experts which are very internationally recognized in the fields to respond. As a first comment, I just want to also reiterate that we are in this first phase of the project doing the detailed design of the actual technical implementation. In the presentation made by Juan Pablo this morning, he outlined that if we look at the requirements for the quality infrastructure in Mozambique in view of the export market for this specific sector, that the starting point is to understand what the requirements are, of course, from the perspective of the EU in terms of their standards and the regulations, and then to really be able to select very carefully what the critical areas are that we will be able to make an intervention in. So Margarita's excellent presentation concluded with some of the initial observations and findings, and your discussion today will help us to narrow down our focus of work. Our partner in this implementation will be UNIDO, but we also will be working with the vast conformity assessment landscape in Mozambique. We are aware of the various laboratories, of certification bodies, and of service providers that will be operating in the country, and some of the specific requirements that we need to address need to be highlighted as we conclude this first phase of our project, which we call our inception phase. So thank you, everybody, and it is really important for this first of our webinars in our project that we can engage in the dialogue with you. I will open the discussion by just a first question. I have noted a number of the questions that asked really about how the small companies can participate. We saw a question that was raised by coming from the fishermen's community to ask how can fishermen also engage in the project, and how in this process of engaging in the project will we be able to support them. It was a very interesting question raised that is also expressing the importance of how in the selection process we need to consider the sustainability of especially the SMEs when they participate with us in this project, in order to ensure that they do not that they can actually be supported and they are sustainable after the project has supported. And I think we have a very good awareness at the moment of the challenge as a result of the COVID pandemic, and how this has had a very negative impact on the people in Mozambique, on people's livelihoods, but on the economy as a whole. So I am raising this question because Wolfgang and Alberto, we're going to deal with a quality question first, and then I will ask that you prepare so long, because I think this is a very critical element, the impact of the project. Of course, we can strengthen the quality infrastructure and have a wonderful infrastructure available. But if this infrastructure is not accessible to the companies, and the companies themselves cannot get the opportunity to then export and really contribute to the economic development of the country, and we know that SMEs are the lifeblood of any economy, then our project will not be so successful. So while Wolfgang and Alberto is thinking about that, there were a number of questions that asked about whether the project can support also, especially the laboratories in the government, which deals with testing. We have done a good analysis with also the support of INOC and the government departments concerned, to understand how the various laboratories that are involved with the various sanitary and phytosanitary, the SPS notification processes are organized in Mozambique. And we are then aware of the very important role, as was correctly mentioned in the question answer session, of the laboratories of the Ministry of Health. The Ministry of Health in Mozambique has a very specific role in terms of the food safety responsibilities in the country. And indeed, the project will be considering in which areas are the most critical interventions required in the area of captured or aquaculture products and captured fish or aquaculture fish, in which we can then make an intervention. So I hope I have answered the questions that came in terms of whether the project will indeed be looking at that. The answer is yes. Director Satoy, if you are still with us, maybe in a bit later as we come to the closing part, because we will be asking you to do some comments at the end. I would appreciate, Director, if you could reflect a bit on the role of how the relationship also will be with the project to support the laboratory, for example, of the Ministry of Health, and the laboratory, of course, of the Ministry of Fisheries, in which we know that the conformity assessment requirements for some particular tests are extremely important. So in the end, Director, we will come back to Enoch to just also confirm with the audience that although we're working closely with Enoch, that we indeed will be working also with some of the other laboratories, which are very important in this process. I will stop there at this point in time, and I would like first then to hand the floor back to our colleagues on the SME component, because this is a really important number of questions that were raised. So Wolfgang or Alberto, I do not know which of you would like to take the question. Wolfgang, you just need to unmute this, or Alberto.
Wolfgang, do you want to take the first question? And
Well, I'll go to the second one about the SMEs.
okay, perfect. First of all, thank you, Francois, and also thank you to our audience for posing the questions. The question was related to whether we support the project will per se support fishermen, and also concerning how this selection will be done. So we would like to comment that the PROMOVE Comércio project engaged directly with the SMEs, and who there, as the question was, the SMEs in turn, they select the fishermen. So as such, the project will provide a support to the SMEs and not directly to the fishermen. In this sense, we would like to highlight the selection of SMEs. However, the SMEs will be measured against a set of criteria that we have established for evaluating the SMEs. And this set of criteria also include the work conditions, the social standards followed by the company, and also the work safety and environmental friendly practices by the company. This is also related with the question of whether or not they are following good fishing practices. So I hope that answers the question. Otherwise, we will be happy to provide a more in detail answer. Thank you.
Okay, well, this is, there are a few inputs about Senora Isabel Massive's question on what about 3 years after the project ends. You know, I mean, this is a very important aspect, because call it sustainability of activities of interventions. Well, there's always two sides of the coin to say. The companies which are enabled to export or are already exporting and internationalized have on one hand a certain responsibility to continue operations. So they have to foresee that their employments, the personnel, the financial aspects, and so on and so forth are in a positive kind of relation, you know. I mean, this of course also is important to have responses and positive communication to clients and so on, and to have functioning supply chains. I mean, this is all part of a functioning business. On the other hand, yeah, the project will be gone. There is another kind of important aspect about the PDS providers. If you remember the display on explanation on one of the slides, PDS providers, national public or private sector PDS providers, will be enabled by the project to provide demand-oriented services. Demand-oriented means what is needed for the specific companies on operational and strategic measures to maintain a long-term competitiveness on international markets, in this case to the EU. So the second point is related to well, specific support, upgrading support to exporting companies, which includes all these internal issues like processes, products, in terms of costing issues, human resource issues, marketing, processing in terms of new methods, in terms of administrational support, and so on and so forth. All these processes, internal processes, need to be in place and functioning. On the other hand, there will be a support by the BDS providers, again, to make companies more self-sustaining in terms of their competitiveness. And this is about cost leadership. And on the other hand, competitive edges, you know. I mean, both is important for the company to maintain a good approach and long-term approach in the markets, because there is all over somewhere another company which seems to be better or whatever, doing better prices and having other products. So it's about having a positive BDS provider kind of landscape and a upgraded company, which is a good precondition to survive more than 3 years, of course. Thank you.
Wolfgang, thank you, and Alberto for your insights. It's encouraging to see the participation from the SMEs, and just to invite all the SMEs again to please participate in the work of our Result 3 colleagues in the project, where we now are really looking at the specific needs of the SMEs, and the links were shared, and we'll share them again at the end of the project, of today's webinar. I would like to also just look back at the bit of the presentation made by Juan Pablo Davila. As we mentioned, we are starting with the looking at the intervention from the market requirements and regulations. Then we will analyze what the various requirements are, for example, for the specific tests that need to be conducted, for the specific calibrations that need to be performed, for the specific training that need to be performed, for the specific equipment to be required. And then we will be working very closely with INOC and with the other state laboratories to see where the best services can be provided and what the respective mandates are of the various institutions. For example, where INOC needs to strengthen its work in training, because we are very satisfied that there's a very good training department at INOC. And we have seen over the last years that this training department have started offering some very good services in certification training to the Mozambican economy. We have seen this very strong in the area of Maputo. What we hope to do is to focus our efforts in the areas of Nampula and of Zambezia through this project, because we have been working very closely with the Maputo region for the last years. And it's very important that we extend the work then into specifically with the support of this project into Nampula and with in Zambezia. We have also in the past projects worked closely with, for example, the laboratory of the Ministry of Fisheries in Sofala, in Beira. So for this project, we hope that the laboratories in Kilimane, especially, and in the city of Nampula, will be working closely with us. We also need to see how do we make the services of INOC, for example, in calibration and in legal metrology, more accessible to those enterprises in Nampula and Zambezia, which are located very far away and logistically always have some challenges to reach Maputo. So these are some of the aspects which we are looking at, and we want to give the assurance to the companies and the enterprises participating today that all of this is looking really importantly at making the quality infrastructure more accessible and making sure that the quality infrastructure addresses those key aspects where we can really, in the short lifetime of the project, which is indeed around 3 to 4 years, where we can indeed make the difference. Having said that, I would like to ask, we had a question from Maria Cristina Antal. She raised her hand. Maria Cristina Antal is expert in testing, microbiology and chemistry testing. I hope I had this correct, Maria. And I would like, if Karen allows, that we give her the floor to raise a question. Thank you.
Muito bem. Bom dia. Estão a ouvir-me? Sim? Bom dia a todos. Sim, obrigada. Foi uma apresentação muito interessante em termos do projeto Promove Comércio, em que engloba várias áreas. A minha parte de participação, enquanto também expert dentro deste projeto, é dar o apoio na área dos testes e tutoriais. Efetivamente, há muito trabalho a fazer em Moçambique. Moçambique tem capacidades para alcançar todos estes objetivos que foram falados e, neste momento, em termos de background, encontramos-nos a fazer o levantamento das capacidades dos laboratórios existentes para dar resposta a estas questões, nomeadamente até colocadas pela Margarida, que são necessárias na capacitação dos laboratórios. Muitos deles já são acreditados e assim têm apenas que aumentar a sua capacidade de testes e alargar o âmbito da acreditação. Outros laboratórios que ainda não o são terão que dar o início, mas irão alcançar também os objetivos. Era importante também referir o que a Margarida disse, e também em termos dos objetivos do programa, em que a finalidade da implementação de normas ou a certificação dos serviços, todas elas vão exigir que a parte analítica e a componente laboratorial tem que ser realizada em laboratórios acreditados para esses ensaios, de forma a poderem demonstrar a sua qualidade dos testes que efetivamente realizam. Estamos, portanto, na fase inicial do levantamento de todas estas questões e da capacitação dos vários laboratórios nas áreas de intervenção, e acho que se vai conseguir aqui uma bela e uma boa interligação entre todas estas áreas, por forma, com o seu objetivo final, em que Moçambique possa entrar à vontade no mercado europeu na área da colocação dos seus produtos, nomeadamente de pesca e aquacultura, de acordo com as legislações e regulamentações existentes. Não sei, ficarei também aberta para qualquer questão ou qualquer pergunta que pretendam. Obrigada.
Obrigada, Maria. Much appreciated for that intervention. We look forward in future, Christina Antau, to also some webinars with you as you conduct your work on the technology and testing. So yes. We are very pleased that you can join. And you have, I think, from your experience in the past years working with the UNIDO, with the support of the European Union in looking at the quality infrastructure from the perspective of the microbiology and chemical testing laboratories in the country, you have, I think your expertise and your experiences will be extremely valuable. So thank you for that intervention. At this stage, we had some questions whether we will share the presentations. So I want to just thank everyone, because in the registration process, we have been able now to build a database of your contact information. And we will indeed be making available not only the PowerPoint presentations, but we will also be looking at making available a recording of today's webinar. I think it's extremely important because we know that not everyone are able to be present today in this webinar. And for that reason, we will be creating ongoing efforts through the use of digital systems to make sure that the work we are doing throughout the lifetime of the project will always be available and be shared. You also have seen today and have met Mr. Zacharias Andamela, who is the National Project Coordinator for the project based in Maputo. And you will be very welcome to always get in touch with Zacharias and our team in Maputo as we embark in the next years, and we look forward to that. At this stage, Karen, I haven't seen any specific questions or hands coming up, and so I think it's a good time. Let's I think we have another poll. So can I invite you to introduce the next poll, please? Thank you, Karen. I don't know if you wanted to have some audio with that, so maybe you are muted, but thank you for launching this poll for us. So I think the question is quite important because, again, these questions, specifically this question, will help us to see where the audience believes the focus should be as we engage in the project. I mentioned that we are busy with what we call the inception phase of the project. So it's really important that we get a good idea from the perspective of the participants of where they believe the emphasis need to be. And this information will be extremely important to us as we embark on the process. Karen, I will give the audio to you. Maybe you would like to.
Thanks, Francois. In the meantime, I'm allowing some time for the attendees to respond. It's a quite a long question and quite a long set of answers. But as you said, it's critical at this stage of the project to also identify and have the audience perspective in terms of where do they see that there is more impact in terms of upgrading of the fishery sector business environment. So I am allowing a few more seconds for the attendees to answer. And then we would end the poll and display the results. And this is the last poll for today, and also maybe one of the most important ones that will also help us identify also the way forward for our intervention. Okay, we have quite a good number of votes. I will end the poll now, and I'll share with you the results. So as you can see, the majority have identified as key answers: better coordination between stakeholders, availability of technical services at a more affordable price, and well, actually before delivery of training to all value chain actors, very critical, having capacity building, and then facilitation of export procedures. I would then hand over back to you, Francois, for the rest of the discussion. Thank you. And thanks all to participants for the answers.
Karen, I just want to ask the timekeepers if we may just have 5 more minutes, please, because I know I have someone looking at the time and really making sure I don't overrun. But I was very encouraged by especially these results. I will like to address, give you the floor. We saw one of the most important issues that people raised here were related to the matter of good coordination between the stakeholders. And this was a very interesting observation. We know it's, the coordination is always really critical. And one of these particular aspects of the project deals with the matter of the quality policy in Mozambique. Juan Pablo mentioned this as one of the most important initial areas of work that we will be undertaking together with UNIDO. We are working closely with the Ministry of Industry and Commerce, with the National Director for Industries, as well as the National Director for Foreign Investment, as our 2 counterparts in the project. So on this particular point, I am very positive that the issue about coordination came out, because the national quality policy has been drafted, and INOC I'm talking for Director Stoy at this moment, who I hope will still join us, or at the end can come back on this point. And INOC is at this point in time under the collaboration with the Ministry of Industry and Commerce, busy with what we call a harmonization process of this national quality policy amongst government departments. And the coordination in these areas start really at this level. So I think for us, it's a fantastic intervention that has already been initiated by the government and by INOC, that the issue of a national quality policy, the coordination amongst government departments and the respective roles of various government departments and their institutions that are so important in ensuring that the quality infrastructure works in accordance with what is required, both in terms of the aspects of food safety on the one hand. I spoke about sanitary and phytosanitary measures and the role, for example, of the Ministry of Health in that, supported by the Ministry of Fisheries, of course, and then particularly how the infrastructure and the role of INOC under the Ministry of Industry and Commerce is really looking at technical barriers to trade and those kind of issues, as well as Juan Pablo mentioned, the area of the EPA trade safeguards, which are also important when it comes to these discussions, how all this will come together. So I think, Juan Pablo, in your wrap-up session, which will come in the next 5 minutes, I would really appreciate if you could also just reflect on this issue, because I saw this coming out as a very important point. And I do hope, Zacharias, that our project can really make the contribution even in this way. And often this is we always see, a lot of people see a lot of the technical work we're doing, but a lot of this work and the coordination level is going to be extremely important. I am not seeing any specific questions that are coming up. So just to confirm, I also have not seen any hands that has been raised. So from my side, I really thank everyone for your participation, for your contribution, for the questions that were asked. Apart from and maybe just to close, and again, thank you for our colleagues from the Result 3 component, especially Alberto and Wolfgang, because when we talk about coordination, about stakeholders, the key stakeholder in this entire project, as we heard from the first questions that were asked, is that we work across the value chains with our enterprises and ensure that we do not just embark on this fantastic journey of quality infrastructure, looking at the EU requirements specifically, but we take the companies of Mozambique and the enterprises with us on this journey. So from my side, thank you everybody for the questions and the discussions. I'm handing back the floor now to Zacharias, who will be introducing the closing part of today's webinar for us. Thank you.
Muito obrigado, François, pela palavra e pela moderação de discussão à volta da apresentação da Margarida. Também aproveitar para agradecer a Margarida mais uma vez pela rica apresentação, que de facto acabou criando muito interesse nas pessoas, daí as perguntas. E gostaria também de aproveitar para dizer que estamos a partilhar o e-mail institucional, o e-mail de Promove Comércio, com os colegas, no bate-papo, nas conversas. Se tiverem alguma dúvida ou algumas perguntas que não foram esclarecidas aqui, agradecer que nos enviassem um e-mail e teremos o prazer de poder partilhar. Antes de passar a palavra para o líder do projeto e o diretor de INOC, o Dr. Alfredo Stoy, irei aproveitar esta oportunidade para dizer que nós teremos mais um webinar próxima semana, tanto no dia 3 de novembro, e este vai se focar muito na agricultura, produtos agrícolas. Este era nos produtos pesqueiros e teremos produtos agrícolas, e gostaria muito de poder convidar todos os participantes, e se puderem partilhar essa informação com outras pessoas interessadas, seria muito bom, porque iríamos ter a necessária audiência que nós pretendemos. No interesse do tempo, vou passar a palavra para o colega João Paulo, e depois dele vamos convidar o Dr. Alfredo Stoy para poder fazer o fecho desse encontro, e mais uma vez, muitíssimo obrigado.
Thank you very much. I will just wrap up thanking again everyone from the audience for their questions, for their participation, as well a big thank to the experts, to Dr. Sitoe and to the EU representative. On the immediate steps that the project will take is to identify what will be the specific activities, the specific interventions. We have now started the discussions with the different counterparts that we have mentioned. We are also looking for counterparts to better have the implementation of our activities. And a very important exercise that we're doing during this time is to prioritize what is it to be done, what will have the most impact at the end of the next 3 years. And also it is a balance between the budget that we have. We would like to have unlimited budget, who wouldn't? But reality is there is a limited budget, there is a limited time, and we need to make the best use of the budget and the time. So we will be coming back to different stakeholders, to the different partners to identify what are the specific activities and what is it that the project can do for that institution or that SME, and also what the SME or what the institution can do for the project. This is, as mentioned, this is a thing that is not for UNIDO, is for the Mozambican industry. We want to have interventions that are sustainable, and we want to work together to get the best of the results that we can with the budget that we have and with the time that we have. Having said that, thank you very much for your attention. We will have more webinars on another sector value chain next week, and then we will have a full presentation of the project activities and the main interventions during the first week of December this year. Thank you again.
Boa tarde a todos. Eu também iria começar por pedir desculpas, porque houve um certo momento que eu estive fora devido ao corte de energia que sofremos aqui na instituição. Daí que não acompanhei todas as apresentações, mas queria, em nome do INOC, agradecer a participação ativa de todos. Penso que houve boas contribuições que vão permitir que o projeto dê passos mais seguros no futuro. E, em especial, queria agradecer aos apresentadores que fizeram apresentações excelentes, também incluindo aqui a equipe da UNIDO, chefiada pelo João Paulo, que pela primeira vez nos encontramos, no passado encontramos lá fora do país, mas pela primeira vez encontramos aqui no webinar. O François, pela boa coordenação, incluindo o Zacarias, que também fez um excelente trabalho. Estamos a escapar aqui a Karim, mas penso que já me recordei dela, que estava zangada comigo por não ter respondido, mas acabamos acertando o passo. E dizer que, de fato, estes assuntos da qualidade constituem, de fato, um grande desafio para Moçambique, tanto do lado da própria infraestrutura como tal, como também dos utilizadores. Estou a falar, neste caso concreto, das pequenas e médias empresas, que ainda precisam de muita formação, muita sensibilização para conseguir entender essas matérias e aproveitar as oportunidades, portanto, que a União Europeia, portanto, nos facilita em termos do acordo EPAS. Tendo dito isto, não sei se me permite, também queria dizer obrigado também à participação da União Europeia, porque já não estou a ver aqui a minha contraparte, mas se não está cá, a informação vai chegar de uma ou de outra maneira, que agradecemos, portanto, a presença dela. Não sei se, Zacarias, posso declarar encerrado este webinar, não sei, a palavra é sua.
O objetivo da sua intervenção é mesmo para dar por encerrado, e depois de si não vejo mais ninguém a poder falar.
Obrigado.
Senhor diretor.
Obrigado. Obrigado. Então, encerramos o webinar, ficamos à espera do webinar do dia 3, que é uma terça-feira. Na terça-feira, no Ministério, costuma haver conselhos técnicos, por isso, não quero me justificar, mas essa é a minha realidade. Como o Gerardo não está, fica tudo complicado. Mas vamos ver. Dependendo da hora, vamos ver se poderei também participar no seu webinar, que também para mim seria importante, porque a agricultura é uma área também que tem muita cadeia de valor, que acompanhando isso iria permitir também a nossa intervenção como INOC.
This webinar. Thanks, Dr.